Welcome, everyone, to the March 2025 layout tour of the 4th Division Pacific Northwest region of the NMRA. And today we're fortunate to have back Jerry Boudreaux from Dallas, Oregon, with his third in a series of presentations on his layout. And today's going to share information on operations and simplifying the operations and a bit of a recap of what we saw a year ago in some of the earlier presentations. So, with that, I will turn it over to Jerry and Burr to run the slides.
This is our third presentation about the Poscanel Railroad, which is a demonstration layout, HO scale. And we're going to talk about operation tidbits here. I have some goals. I've had 150 op sessions or so, maybe more, and I've developed some ideas about them, how to make them easy on ourselves. The goals for my railroad are, of course, personal enjoyment. Demonstration layout, this shows how things can be done. Don't purport to show the only way to do it, but show a way. And then the next thing is I get to share the hobby through op sessions and also presentations like these. So this presentation is about operations setup and supporting these processes to try to make them easy. So if you're looking for layout planning on the Poscanel and actual board by board construction, see number 1. If you're looking for the track planning for operations in terms of setting up towns that can be switched easily, please see our second presentation. So the materials that I use have to be easily accessible. So that means I'm using MS Word, MS Excel, PowerPoint for this presentation, ruler, printer paper, scrapbook cutter. Now, the scrapbook cutter, that would be available at a fabric store or a scrapbook store. They're just plastic slides with a single edge razor blade in them, and they work really well for cutting paper. Also, a laminator. I laminate most of the stuff that we use, and I use the big box store simple laminators that are available through Office Max and those kinds of stores. Scissors, tape. And so in the educational industry, we call these string and sticky tape things. It's just made up of normal stuff. So here we have a layout map, and you can see the lower level and the upper level. You'll see that it's a linear layout. That is, you can walk along with your train. What you're seeing here is a rendering. The layout is 40 feet long and 30 feet wide, and a 650-foot long main line. So that gives us a chance to stretch the trains out. So that's where our trains start and end. That represents both ends of the railroad. And that also represents the eastern border of Arizona and the western border of Arizona. If you look along there, you'll see a double track main line that curves around against the backdrop. That means that main line is behind the dark switching area. Those black wide lines are little towns. And so we try to run the main line behind the towns so that when the super chief comes by, Joe Schmuckatello's cuffs on his shirt don't derail the dome car. And that double track main line, yeah, continue right on around there, Bert. And it goes down through the whoops. And then we're running along the $1 million curve, that great big long curve right there. There you go. That's a 96-inch radius curve. And then we wind up Rufus Hill, which is where that train was running in the introductory video. We Red Rock loop it. We do a Tehachapi loop type thing. And that brings us out to let's move over to the one to the right, the layout to the right. And that brings us out on top where we cross the door on a bridge. And that brings us into Summit. That's a 3-track yard. We do a lot of train meets there. And then we continue on around the corner and we get to East Granite Creek. We go around that big black line and we get to West Granite Creek. That's operated as 2 towns. And the main line swings around the curve and it goes down along Big Bug Creek. It's kind of a serpentine motion. We go through the little bitty town of Wickiup and we make it around the corner. And we head into the Twin Tunnels. That gets us onto a helix that bleeds off all the hill that we did on Rufus Hill, and brings us out back down at the bottom at the double slip switches and into the other end of the yard. We run this point to point. So these trains are running across Arizona to the east and across Arizona to the west. Operations. Some like it, some don't like operations. It's all okay. There was a thing that went on in the magazines for quite a few years where if you weren't an operator, you weren't a true model railroader. And my claim is that I can have fun running a 040 dockside around a little circle. So I think that we have great model railroaders, some of whom don't like operations and some who do. So you just kind of fit yourself on that continuum wherever you want to be. There are three kinds of operations as I see them. There's the formal ops. And so these formal ops include a crew number. My maximum is 14. Uh, they sign up for certain jobs. They use car cards or a car forwarding system, train orders, and that's kind of a formal op. Now, I've come up with this fun run thing where we use 6 to 7 people, and they bring their own equipment. They can if they would like. They can use my equipment, and we just run trains. No car cards, no waybills, no nothing. It's just a fun run. And then the last kind is when the layout owner, me, sneaks out to the train room, turns the lights on really low, and plays with my train set all by myself. Of course, that doesn't last long because this is a working ranch and the girls all know where I hang out. These ideas work on most layouts, that is, from large layouts down to little small ones. So if you have a shay and 3 or 4 cars on a little 4x8 layout, many of these ideas are appropriate for that. If you have 6 units on a train with 60 cars, these operation scenarios can work with that. Or even a 280 with a little 12-car local, they work on that. Now, this picture shows a couple of box cars where we did not have a locomotive available. So the gentlemen that were working that decided they were going to use that old John Deere 620 and shove these cars around just to bug me. It did. Few of these ideas are absolutely original to me. Most have been gleaned from authors, layouts, and op sessions. In fact, um, Bill Messicar, I think I saw him join this meeting. I visited his layout a couple times, and boy, I got all kinds of ideas up there. So I can't claim that these ideas are all mine. Some of them are original, but most of them are gleaned from other people. Also, these ideas that I present here are not the only way to do it. There are many, many, many different ways that fit many different situations. The big thing about this, when you're going to have op sessions, is you need to make it easy on yourself. So the first op session is always tricky. You want to start out really small, just 1 or 2 really good friends, because you want to talk to them, maybe up to 6 people. You debrief after each session. So you sit down and talk, take them to McDonald's or something, and ask them questions. What was the good thing? What were the things that need adjustment and so on? And you take notes. Make it user friendly. By user friendly, I mean everything gets a label. So, for example, the stations, industries, you'll notice here the J.I. Gardner Company, the sign is right on the building. We label our curves, $1 million curve and number 10 curve, our hills, Rufus Hill. We also label rivers and creeks. Now my names are coming from the Southwest. So we have Sibique Canyon and Tonto Creek and Hassayampa River and stuff like that. It's all kind of Southwest motif. There's a thing called a crew call that I use. It's a week prior. I send out a text alert. And then on Wednesday prior, the people have responded. And I send out a little sign up type thing. And most guys know what the jobs are on my layout. And then on Thursday morning, I send out what the jobs are that were asked for. So everybody kind of has a heads up on what they're going to do. So now here's a form that I kind of made this one up. This is an operations sheet. And what this operations sheet does is it lists the trains, and you'll see across there switcher, turn, local, shooter, and available units, and so on. And then these blocks have the train number, the location, and who's going to run it. This basically is a paper that I run the op session with. And that way I don't have to remember all this stuff. We develop this as the information comes back from my crew, and so that I know who wants to do what slot. It doesn't mean you can't change after you get here. So there's a room there for introductory comments. Those are the yellow things up on top. It gives my power assignments, which engines are going to do what jobs, the crew assignments, who's going to do what job. And it's divided into these four, one, two, three, four, five different kinds of trains. A pool sign up is just a guy that says, hey, I'll do anything. Doesn't matter. And it also lists available extra units in case of a failure. They do happen. And also along the right margin there are repair notes like, hey, you better fix this switch. It's broken. Now, in order to get the layout ready for the next op session, there's a restage checklist. These are pretty simple. The one on the left is to restage the trains. So put the trains in the right spot. And then the little form on the right is to restage the cars. Make sure the car cards match the locations of the cars. Now, it takes me about 2 hours to do this. And the reason for that is that my operators fundamentally do this on the trains that they run during the last 15, 20 minutes of the op session. They're actually restaging the railroad for the next operation. So I don't have to do that. So the yard checks to match the cars, and the next one is I run around and I pick up waybills from the agent's box, and we'll see what those look like. I can check the train makeup in terms of sequence of cars. I can check the power assignment. Notice that I'm just checking this stuff. I'm not actually doing it. And these tasks were completed by the previous crew. All I do is run around and make sure it was done right. Now, the first session, I started small and I wanted to be real specific about who could be there. And so I debriefed after the session, and here's the chairs and so on. I listened very carefully and I took notes. But then, you can increase the numbers in your op session as you go along, as it's appropriate. Now, the question is, well, where is your crew? I wanted to point out that modern criminology and facial recognition software resulted in my crew leaving as soon as they saw the camera. So what you see is their empty chairs and a little smoky footprints going out of the train room. My first session, it was a total disaster. I'd invited about 6 folks. Well, the word got out and like 25 people showed up. There was one individual showed up who was so excited about being a part of that. He had 6 friends in the car with him. And after about 20 minutes, I mean, I tried to get the thing going. The trains were running. And about 20 minutes later, the DCC system just went belly up. Those of you that are familiar with Digitrax, it went into slot max. I hadn't cleared the slot max. I didn't know anything about slot max. And so it just quit. So we brought the cookies out early. And my op session was very similar to this Amtrak train arriving at the same time on tracks 1, 2, and 3. I don't know where this picture was taken, but it had to get somebody's head scratching. So op sessions can be disastrous or they can be great. Suggestion is don't wait. Op sessions early on in the building of your layout can point out design flaws right away. Get crews in on the ground floor and they'll make comments that'll be very, very helpful to you. And it keeps you motivated. Now, notice here in this picture that the ground cover instead of plywood is brown paint. And there's foam core buildings made out of just foam core stuff. The building there on the right doesn't even have windows in it or anything. That's an old plastic thing I picked up at a yard sale. And then the grain elevator, that's still there in the present form. That's just cut pieces of PVC pipe. And I don't know, we've shipped hundreds and hundreds of grain cars out of that pipe. So that serves as my grain elevator. So in 11 years and 75 plus, it's probably up to 100 sessions now. My layout's not done, but it doesn't seem to detract from the guys having a good time. The self-staging concept. So let's take the yard job. This is where Doug Taylor, who's part of our group now, he's the maestro of the yard, and he sets up locals and turns for the next session. The staging supplies the shooters. That is, I have, let's see, 10 trains, 11, 12. I have 15 trains in staging, and those trains come out, do their thing, and get back off stage. So we have stuff available for people to run just like right away. There are a few trains that need to be restaged. We call one of them is the BSS. That's a train that picks up all stock cars. It ends up with being about 50 stock cars long. And the PUX is another one that's about 60 reefers long. And those, I run those up to the top of the layout, and then we just cut the cars out. Some of the pickups are 10 cars, 15 cars, 20 car pickups. And so they're all ready to go when the guys leave. And the cards are already in the boxes. We'll say more about that in a few slides. So basically, the crew does a huge amount of work. Now, if I end up with a op session that finishes early, if you're teaching in a high school or a junior high and your kids get finished early, it's generally not a good plan to have those kids sitting there doing nothing, because they will figure out how to entertain themselves, and normally that's at the teacher's expense. So you have sponge. It's an activity that you can slide in at the end of the class. Now, I have a sponge on this railroad, and that is the PAX, which is the Pasquanel Express. And that dumps 50 cars onto Doug at this yard and generates a whole bunch of operation. The self-staging concept, some more ideas. The crew can help to do the yard checks so car locations match car card locations. They can attend to defects, simple things they can fix, or they can call my attention to it. They can run trains to their start points, typically, which is back into staging. And then I just run around, and all I have to do is put the bills in the cars on the train. So I just add the waybills. So, and then we also have restage specials, which puts trains back where they need to be. Several different ways for the crew to help with that. Let's take a look at the Pasquanel Yard startup. This is Doug Taylor's specialty. So if you look way on the back track, way in the back, you'll see some war bonnets. That's Santa Fe speak for passenger engines. That's number 47, and that's set up to arrive off the branch line. And then if you look at the SFRD tracks, that's the Santa Fe refrigerator department, you'll see 2 tracks worth of refrigerator cars. There's about 60 of those cars back there, and those are all ready to go. The arrival departure tracks are full of cars that have already been built, and they are ready to switch. That represents about 100 cars. And then there's 5 locals ready to go. If you look carefully at that slide, you'll see some caboose in there on the bowl tracks with lighted markers. That means that those trains are ready to depart eastbound, and then there's another 2 trains ready to go westbound. So we have the locals are ready to go, and then these 5 express cars right in the middle. They're back 1, 2, 3, 4 on the 5th track. Yeah, right there. Those express cars are going to be picked up by number 47. So they're in a place where the switch engine could get to them and set those up for that train. The through track, you'll notice, is the second track over from the fascia. That is supposed to be a clear track. Please note that somebody left the caboose out there and they foul that clear track. Now, my guess is that Doug Taylor's going to go over there when he first gets to the yard. He's going to surreptitiously look to the right, look to the left, and then magically those caboose just ride back about 3 inches. He takes care of problems as he goes. Okay. So moving trains, how do we move trains on this railroad? Well, we use train orders, sort of. We make them simple, simple, simple. And here's an example of a train order. We start at the top. This is a special order for an eastbound light helper. It says the duty station, which is Summit. So you go on duty at Summit with these helpers. The running order, you're going to run from Summit to Wait. The need for clearance per D 28.6 and S 28.6. Let me make a comment about rules. Typically, there are rules on the railroad, lots of them. And in the old days, a D rule was for double track, and an S rule was for single track. I've had people come to me and say, "Oh my gosh, what's 28.6? I don't know what 28.6 is. I don't. I work for the railroad. I don't even see 28.6. It's not in my rule book." That is correct. So 28.6 on the Poscanel Railroad means that if you're sitting in an SW 1500 switch engine and there are 7 SD 45s bearing down on you on the same track, get out of the way. That's all that rule says. Superiority of this train is not high. If you read in the red stuff there, I've got to lean forward a little bit. All trains, motor cars, high railers, pedestrians, cattle, sheep, and rabbits are superior to light helpers unless otherwise authorized by the mountain dispatcher. So light helpers on the Poscanel don't have a very high superiority. It also indicates how to get in the yard, and then it tells the engineer where to park the engines. So where he starts, where he parks, the whole thing is there. I made this little picture here so you guys could see what the sizes of these things are. These are 1-inch increments. And the directional signs, the top yellow one there, just showing what's east and what's west, are all over the layout. So anybody at any time can tell which direction they're going. The typical train order, this one is for passenger trains because it has a red top on it. And you can see basically what the size is there. The nice thing about these guys is that they record these, and then you can go back and look at these slides later for future reference. So here's a whole page of train orders. So I make them up in MS Word text boxes, and then I highlight a little bit of stuff. They're color coded per train type. And then I cut them to size. I just leave a little bit of white outside that border with my little slide cutter, the scrapbook cutter. And then I laminate them. And then they go in this box. So they're pre-printed, they're laminated, they're color coded. The information is basically in the same order on all of them. Now, they do not represent a Form 19 train order, but they do allow for guys that show up once a month to not have to remember a bunch of stuff. They're laminated, they're pocket size, and you'll see they go in these train order boxes. This is divided eastbound and westbound. So the eastbound stuff is on the right, the westbound stuff is on the left, and then the special stuff like turns, passenger trains, and so on are in the middle. Once in a while, we get into a situation where a pre-printed train order will not cover the situation. So we have these little forms that we can write out very quickly. They are directional. There's one for east and one for west. It looks a little bit railroady. It can be written out in about 30 seconds, and we use them in a pinch. The picture shows what size they are, and the next slide will show one that's been filled in. So if we look at this one that's filled in, we have a date. It's to C&E, conductor and engineer, engine number 2693. So it tells the crew to get a Jeep 7. I think that's what 2693 was. In Poscanel, PA, and run east to Ponderosa, PO, via the old main line. You'll see that check mark there. And then there's some little railroady stuff down below. And then it says your work is to return as a POX. That means there's an order waiting for you at Ponderosa, and you'll come back on that order. You have a little bit of work to do at town. Now it's okay. That means it's approved at 10:15 a.m. And so you can leave at that point. It sits on my desk. It's divided east and westbound. They're color coded. And those blanks we were just talking about, you can see them sticking up in the back. We don't use them very often, but sometimes they come in really handy. So for visiting engineers, because we use a lot of abbreviations, kind of like the old telegrapher stations, where each station had its own call sign. So I have the abbreviation help there so they can look up whatever they're trying to find. Also, the station strip. I wrote an article about this about 10 years ago. You'll notice that the station strip is a linear representation of the main line with the towns, abbreviations along the way. And you'll notice right in the middle on this one, there's a yellow box on the black line. That shows where this person is. And down below, it says they are at West Summit. Now, if there's a person on here that's talking about Willow Springs, you can see how far away that person is, how many control points there are between you and him. So it's just sort of helpful to give you a reference. And these station strips are set around, they glue on the fascia, or they lay in the layout, or they're hiding the rocks or something, just to show people where they are. Lineups. We provide a lineup. They indicate the sequence of trains. They do not indicate a schedule. And again, this is made up in MS Word. I print it out in a 2-column format. It helps the crew know what's coming, what the sequence might be. We do pretty much the same thing each op session, so they're pre-printed because the sequence is typically the same. I don't put the date on them until the day of the op session, and it's an MS Word document. So something change, and they can be easily changed because it's just in MS Word, and that's good for moving the trains. Now it comes down to moving the cars. So we have car cards and we have waybills. The car cards, which red and yellow here, show minimal information. It shows the road name, it shows the car number, it shows the car type, and it shows the car color. Now, that yellow one is a boxcar card. The red one is a tank car card. You know, things blow up. So think about a refrigerator car. That would be green, like salad. A stock car would be dark green, like what lays in the bottom of the stock car. The flat cars are light blue. So we have different colors for different cars. And that's a clue when you're looking for the car. You grab a yellow thing, you're looking for a boxcar. Also, typed onto that car card, you'll see on the yellow one, it says eastbound. Well, that tells you which direction this car is going to leave Arizona. Arizona is pretty simple. You're only leaving eastbound or westbound. There's a little bit of traffic that goes south, but not much from our railroad. And as soon as they get the bridge going across the Grand Canyon, stuff can leave northbound. But for my purposes, our cars leave east or west. So when you pull the waybill out, you reveal which direction that car is supposed to leave. Now, the waybill, that's that little guy in the middle. You can see that he slides into the pocket on the regular car card. That waybill, here's a good rendition of the size. It has a colored band across it, and that colored band shows which town. Each one of my towns has a color. Also, where it says team track there, that's the industry where that thing goes. So when that waybill is in that car card, that's a car that needs to be delivered. When you switch it out, you take the waybill out and drop it in the agent's box. The car card goes in the agent's box in a different place. And that means it's staged for the next op session. So here's the trays that I use for restaging. The left tray, that's for all my yard tracks. Though that represents the cars in sequence in the Pasquinel yard. The middle tray are the waybills, and you'll see that they are in there by color code. So each town has its own band across the waybill. And then the right tray, those are car cards or with the pocket in them. And you see how we have different colors for different types of cars. So here's a master page of these car cards. And you can see where they are outlined. These are simply text boxes that I use. They're printed on white paper. But then when I go down to the copy shop, I have the copy shop take the white master and print it out on red paper or green paper. And I use a 90-pound cardstock. If I can get 110-pound stock, I will, but that's kind of hard to find around here. What you do is you make a big slice with your craft cutter right above the second bunch of writing, about halfway. There you go, right on that line. And then you slice them vertically so that they come out as a skinny box right down that line there. That's the bend line. So consider that you have this long, skinny piece of paper. You bend or fold that up, and that creates the pocket. So there's, you can make a lot of these pretty quickly. And then you tape it. Major important discovery on my part. Don't use packing tape. Go to the trouble of finding Scotch book tape for the car cards. Because if you don't, the waybills will very neatly slice the packing tape, and then you're going to have a floppy car card. This book tape, I don't know what they put on it. It's probably some sort of hazardous material, but I'll tell you, they're tough. And you can find it at $4, $5, $8 a roll online. Agent boxes. So here's a typical agent box. You'll see it has 3 pockets, and this is for a whole town. So basically, the east and west slots for spots on the ends of the town. Now, what that means is that this typically sits pretty close to where the depot is. If you're spotting cars to the right of the depot, then you're going to drop the car cards in that right box after you set them out. Because when you set them out, you pull the waybill out and drop that in the agent's box in the center. So the yellow cards on the right are on sidings to the right of the depot. That I don't have a box for each separate industry. What I do is I have a box for the east end or the west end of the railroad. Doesn't have anything to do with eastbound or westbound. It simply means to the right of the depot or the left of the depot, and it makes the cars easy to find. As soon as you set the car out, then the waybill itself drops in that center slot. So the gray cards and the yellow cards in this situation are all ready for the next op session. That's already pre-staged. I just go around and pick up the waybills so that I can rebill more cars going out, and we're good. The box is made out of 60,000 styrene. It's a scribe snap, and I use MEK, and they glue up really quickly. The car card box at Red Rock, you can see where the right slot is for stuff to the right of the depot. The left slot are for spots to the left of the depot. And I've already picked up the waybills. So the waybill box is empty. I know that Red Rock has cars in the proper places, and I have the waybills so I can rebuild cars. Now notice, that's a local right there. That's Doug Taylor's favorite locomotive. He worked for years and years on that. I believe it might be a Varney Dockside or something like that from the 60s, maybe 50s. And then there's 2 cars and a caboose. That's a local for us. So typical labels. My labels are printed on copy paper. They're not printed on fancy paper. I do laminate them. I glue them to the fascia, and I place as close to the feature as possible. So let's look at the slide picture. So under those twin bridges up there, that's Cibecue Canyon, and you'll see right under the center abutment, There's a little yellow thing there that says Civic U Canyon. Okay, then you look down along the fascia on the lower level, that's going to give you direction and that's going to tell you you're at Eagle River. And so that helps find out where you are and which direction is east and west. On my layout, since it's around the walls twice, whenever you're moving west, you're always moving to the left. And when you're moving east, you're moving to the right. It's just kind of like looking at that map in 8th grade. The directions were always the same. So here's a train blocking sheet. I only have about 3 of these because I only have to block about 3 different trains. So it shows the name of the train. It shows the order of towns that the train goes through. It shows the types of cars, B for boxcar, R for reefer. It shows the total number of cars that you can put in that town. And so that allows you to bill a train. So here I'm billing a train. So you need to look at the picture and you'll notice the train setup paper that we saw on the previous slide is laying off there to the right. There's a couple of car cards laying out on my little work area. The yellow one matches that box car, light blue matches a flat car. There's a red one for a tank car and so on. I have waybills laying down there that tells me where these cars go. And in some cases, I've plucked the cars from a track somewhere and I just roll them down in order using that Rix Rax re-railer gizmo. So I can insert the waybills such that they're blocked or unblocked, depending upon if I like the person. I can add cars by rolling them down the ramp. And then once the train is put together, I gather the cards up in the proper order. We shove it to the track where it's going to leave from and put a clip on top, and it's ready to go. Here's the Poscanel yard box. Doug Taylor, who's with us today, he'll look at this, and this is sort of the heartbeat of the yard. This is also made out of 060 styrene. The compartments are labeled, but you'll notice that they're labeled with kind of a plastic insert that can be changed, moved around, and so on, because from time to time, we have to use different slots for different tracks. So we match the signs on the tracks. So when you look at track 2, it should say the same as the label in the box. Also look down at, you'll see my coupler picks, which are simply fondue sticks with an anchor on them, a wall anchor glued on the top. And then there's a bunch of little clips of black ones there. That's what we clamp the car cards together for a single train. There's a way in the back, there's a thing called lost sheep. From time to time, yeah, right back there, lost sheep show up on our layout. That is a car with no car card or a car card with no car. Now I've had during regular op session, well, during the op sessions, I have invariably a person will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I have a car here, but I don't have any information on it at all." And so, having worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad, I do what they did. And I tell the guy, just send it on down to the next town, let them deal with it. So, after a while, that car comes back home, and then we find out where its car card was. So, lost sheep are an important thing for us. This Poscanel Yard startup, we've gone through all that. You just click right on down through it. Yep. And then remember, you want to start out simple and you want to start out small. Don't try to do all this stuff at once. That is scenery and buildings and all that. Start out before you get there. I mean, just put a piece of paper next to the siding with a name on it. That works. Do the easy stuff first. These concepts were developed over many op sessions. I'm not the authority, but I've had some experience. They might not fit you, but they might stimulate an idea. It looks to me like, looking at that picture, this is Summit. There's 3 tracks through Summit, and it looks to me like it's pretty well plugged. This is the thank you slide, and the time for discussions and questions, and that'll be run by Mr. Stewart.
Thanks, Jerry. That was really informative. I can't wait to go and revise my operating plan.
Well, you did a good job flicking slides.
How do you glue a laminated plastic to the front of your layout? What kind of glue do you use?
That's a really good question, and I'll tell you what, I cheat. I use adhesive caulk. I just put it on the back of the laminate, stick it on and it squishes out, but you can use your thumb to rub off the extra. So adhesive caulk works really well. Now, if you want to change the sign, you can peel it off. You can rub off the caulk and just stick it someplace else.
How much time at the end of a session do you allot for the restaging effort?
Oh, that's a great question. That depends upon how hungry I am, because we usually go eat after the end of the off session. Within 15 minutes, we can get her done. But if we're all hungry, they shut off the sound and go to warp 10 on the throttle, and we can get her done in 7 minutes.
If I can rephrase what I think you said, at the end of the session, you're pulling all the waybills out of the car cards and taking them back to your master box.
That is correct.
When you set up a session, you use the blocking diagrams to figure out which waybills you want, and then you go and find empties in the yards or in the towns.
Yes, at the end of the session, I get the waybills because the crews have already put those in the agent's box. So I don't have to do anything with the car cards. So I just pluck out those waybills, and they're all going to be sorted already. They'll be sorted by town. So I go get Red Rock, I go get Verde Valley, and so on like that. And then I put them back in their correct slots on that staging table. Now, when I build a train, and be advised, I only build 2 trains, the Rockets, East and West Rockets. Doug Taylor, during the time that he's running the yard, is building all the other trains, and he's getting them ready for departure. And when they are ready, they have the waybills, the cards, all that with them. He tacks a caboose on, and that's a signal they're good to go.
But does he put waybills in car cards, or did you do that beforehand?
Yeah, those are already done.
Yeah,
by me.
Okay.
And really, the waybills are just a place that the load is going. There's nothing about the load, so you can intertwine your waybills with flat cars, box cars, whatever, right?
That is correct.
So you're not encumbered by understanding specific industries and specific loads.
Well, the only encumbrance is by our own imagination. And believe me, these guys have, if you ask them what's in the boxcar going to J.I. Gardner in Camp Verde, they'll tell you in great detail.
But it's not written on the waybill.
No, it's not written down. And it's probably a really good thing.
But the waybill does have the car type, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I put those little pictures in there. So
right.
The road number, the road name, the car type, and then a slot. And then it tells you if it's going to depart east or west off our layout.
But that's the car card, right? Not the waybill.
Correct. The waybill, all that has is a stripe on it, the colored stripe for the town. See, the waybills are all white. The car cards are the ones that come in different colors. And so the waybill, all that has is the industry. It doesn't talk about the load.
If you have a waybill for an offline location, then that's no longer an empty car.
That's correct. Oftentimes, the car cards, when you pull the waybill out of it, it's been spotted. And then behind that, it'll say eastbound Santa Fe agent, Kansas City. So that car's ostensibly going to Kansas City, but we're just going to send it east. We'll let Berlin and the rest of those places worry about how to switch it.
And do you ever send an empty car back to Doug's yard or something like that? Is there a waybill for an empty move?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, many times when the guys bring their trains back to the yard and Doug has them put the cars on the arrival departure track, the car cards have no bills in them. And then that's one of the things that's up to me or some of the guys that operate with me to come over and, quote, bill the train, unquote. And then we bill them not in order, because if we put them all in order, then Doug wouldn't have any job.
Right.
Depending upon if Doug has been nice or not, we'll make every other car go to a different track. But if he's been really nice and he's not crabby or anything, and he lets me pet his dog, why then we'll just let him have 5 or 6 cars go in the same place.
So can I ask a question about balance? It seems like somehow maybe you or your crew or both, but it seems like a one-person job in terms of sending cars to different locations. You don't want to send too many to one location. So you somehow in your mind have to balance where things are going. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, balance, and that also gets to randomness, and it gets into where people use a lot of playing cards and dice and spinners and all sort of things like that. What I found, which is pretty well worked for me, is I just keep in mind that if I'm going to send 15 cars to an industry, and if only 5 cars fit, I'm probably going to create a problem for the switch engine. So I try not to do that. In the op sessions that we've held, and like I say, there's been a lot of them, I've had only a couple of times when the switch engine guy comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, what do I do with these off spots?" They're called off spots. And I say, "Well, just shove them over there to the third siding and let the next guy take care of them. Or pull the waybills out, bring them back to the yard. We'll send them out somewhere else." So we're pretty cavalier about that.
I just want to point out to everybody that Jerry's been doing this a long time. He claims over 150 op sessions, and I suspect it might even be twice that many. He's done it a lot. So don't be afraid to get your toes wet and embarrass yourself. I'm getting my layout ready to do some ops, and it will be nowhere near as smooth as what Jerry's able to do, but I'll learn a lot.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions, I'd like to give Jerry a big round of applause and thank you for doing this presentation and coming back and focusing on operations, which I think, as folks have pointed out, it takes a while to get everything dialed in and working the way you want it to work and to work smoothly. So we're all beneficiaries of your 100+ op sessions, Jerry.
Well, even
you.
I have a plate of cookies that's ready immediately in case stuff goes south.
With that, we'll close the meeting and thank everybody for joining on this March Saturday.
Yeah, thank you for listening to all this.
So
Thanks,
take
for
care.
organizing. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
much.
Nice. Great presentation. Thank you.